Good. Excellent. Good morning. Welcome to this combined executive member decision session. I'm Councillor Katie Lomas. I'll be chairing us through the first few items up to item number 6, when I will hand over to Councillor Kent to take us from there. Hopefully that is okay with everyone, and I will move on to next. Apologies for absence. We have no apologies for absence. We've got 4 exec members here for the various items we're going to look at this morning. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No. Then we'll move on to the minutes. We have minutes from the combined executive member decision session held on the 27th of January and the session held on the 3rd of February 2026. Is everybody content with those? Yes. We just have one typo that has been amended. That needs to be amended. Sorry, Ben, I got confused there. Where the minutes of the meeting on the 27th of January refer to 2026, where they should refer to 2025. I'm sure everyone can sympathise with the confusion about which year we're in. Probably for me, it lasts up to March. So we'll make that typo amendment and accept those minutes. And thank you for producing them. So we'll move swiftly on then to public participation. We have Councillor Waller who wishes to speak on item 6. Councillor Waller. Do you want me to give you a 30-second warning, Councillor Waller? I will do so.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak on the decision report, Crises and Resilience Fund. This is an important resource for communities in the city. The value of this is emphasised in paragraph 19 of the report. Quote, whilst York continues to have one of the lowest indices of multiple deprivation, there are still pockets of poverty and debt problems. I don't need to tell the executive member as ward councillor for Aiken Ward, and Councillor Lomas doesn't need to tell me as ward councillor for Westfield Ward that there are parts of the city that fall into those pockets. With the increasing pressure of cost of living and rising bills, as well as the increasing financial shocks impacting on families, the need for this resource is important and indeed could affect families right across the city. It is concerning that in paragraph 4 of the report, quote, this means that in real terms, the actual welfare support funding has fallen by a little over £363,000 per annum and over £1 million across the next 3 years. So I would be interested to know what lobbying went through to government to head off this cut in financial support. There are many other sources of support for residents through community funds from utility companies and a whole host of others. And it's important to promote those advice organisations who are genuinely neutral and can give support with partnership with the council and as an honest broker. I would hope that future reports will include this aspect of joined-up approach, which had been developed by the previous administration, and I would emphasise the need to work with the community hubs that operate across the city and the vital work done by community and residents associations in York. In the Equalities Impact Assessment Appendix, the very last comment is, this scheme will also be reported as part of the 12 monthly reports to the executive member portfolio holders, as well as part of the welfare benefits update report. I would like to ask that this is a public document and provided to all ward councillors so they can see the outcomes of the use of this resource to help those most vulnerable constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waller. I didn't even need to give you your 30-second warning. Your comments are appreciated, as is the focus on 2 wards, which I think we're both very familiar with, that do benefit from the support offered through schemes like this. I will invite now officers to present item 6, the Crises and Resilience Fund scheme. And if you wish to make reference to some of the questions Councillor Waller has posed, please do. I certainly will have some comments to make in response to his questions as well. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lomas. My name is Paul Sanderson. I'm the Revenues and Benefits Manager for the City of York Council. I'm here today with my colleague Susan Wood, Welfare Benefits Manager, who has been instrumental in the development of the Council's new Crisis Resilient Fund, provided through funding that the government has given to us. So, the Crisis Resilient Fund has been made available to local authorities across England to support low-income households who encounter a financial shock, and also to support activity that builds individual and community resilience. This funding will cover a period from the 1st of April 2026 to the 31st of March 2029 inclusive, and therefore spans a 3-year period. It's important to note that the fund includes a housing element, which will also run for the same 3-year period. It's important also that the fund is not intended to replace existing local welfare assistance schemes, which play an important role as established discretionary crisis support mechanisms. So the crisis resilient funding provided by the government to York is just under £1.6 million per annum for the next 3 years. So we need to understand, though, when looking at this amount of funding, that compared to previous years, we operated, for example, in 2025-26, a scheme the government called the Household Support Fund, which was a welfare fund, providing £1.8 million, for example, in 2025-26. This funding was separate at that point to the discretionary housing payment funding that the government also offered of £163,000 for 2025-26. So when we combine that with the £1.8 million previously offered for the old scheme, Household Support Fund scheme, we can see that in real terms, for the new Crisis Resilient Fund being provided at 1.6 million, in real terms, we have lost per annum around £363,000 and therefore £1 million over the next 3 years. That said, in a more positive note, this funding is now guaranteed for the next 3 years, and therefore we can plan and we know we have this funding to support our residents across the York area. The funding is allocated with a definition of public funds, and therefore we need to understand that those with no recourse to public funds are not eligible to receive the support. However, the scheme is open to all residents and not those just on welfare support, welfare benefits already. There are 3 objectives of the funding, and that is 1, the provision of effective crisis support, 2, improving individuals and local communities' financial resilience, and 3, bolstering community level support. The scheme also aligns with the Council's own anti-poverty strategy objectives, which specifically are tackling poverty today, preventing people from falling into poverty going forward, and creating long-lasting change. There are 4 strands to the proposed Crisis Resilient Fund policy. 1 is a crisis payment for those who need support who are in immediate crisis. 2, the housing payment, which would previously been called the discretionary housing payments, which provide support to those basically who face a shortfall in meeting their housing costs. 3, the resilience services. Perhaps this also, and the final point relates partly to what Councillor Waller was alluding to. The resilience service is providing funding to be delivered by authorities or external providers to improve financial resilience across the area. And 4, the community coordination, importantly relating to what Councillor Waller was talking about, was the investment in activities that connect and enhance the local support landscape. Table A in the proposed scheme sets out the notional budgets for each of the 4 strands. This scheme and the 4 strands continues to build upon the Council's welfare support programme being delivered since the start and end of the COVID pandemic, and especially in regards to building individual and community resilience. I therefore ask the executive member please to approve the Council's Crisis and Resilient Fund as set out in Annex A, and also to delegate to the Head of Customer Finance, Risk and Insurance, along with consultation with the Council's Head of Finance Section 151 officer, the power to award or amend any financial support, changes and awards in line with the government's 3 outcomes and the 4 strands as set out in the scheme in Annex A and the government scheme guidance in Annex B. Thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Paul. And welcome to your first exec member decision session. So I'd like to say a few things. I would like to say thank you to all of the staff who've worked really hard on this, especially as the notification of the details of the scheme have been very late in coming out this year, as has become usual, and managing to pull together all of the different strands of the scheme, I think, has been a big piece of work done at short notice and under pressure. So that is much appreciated. Thank you. I wanted to just pick up on a couple of points that Councillor Waller made. He rightly noted that the totality of funding in this Crises and Resilience fund is less than the totality of funding from various different sources previously. And he asked what we have done about that. And obviously, I've said many times and explained many times that myself and the council leader have been extensively lobbying government ministers about the need for funding, the need for focus, and the need for support for the people of York. And that won't stop. We'll continue to do that throughout. Councillor Waller also asked about a joined-up approach with community partners. That's absolutely a core and essential part of the work that we do on financial inclusion. And we are continuing to work really closely with our financial inclusion steering group, which brings people together across the city to work out how, working together, we can all get better outcomes for the people of York who need it most. And there've been some brilliant things that have come from that work in the financial inclusion steering group, not only of benefit to us in the work that we do as a council, but mutual benefit to all of the partners who have absolutely found that working together, we can get better outcomes for people than working independently and in silos. And one of the things I'm really keen to point out is that our teams who are working with people day in, day out, who approach the council with a difficulty or a need, are absolutely brilliant at signposting people on to partners who can help them in the longer term. And I think that takes us into discussion of the anti-poverty strategy, which you mentioned there, Paul, that obviously our anti-poverty strategy is really important, and the 3 layers of the anti-poverty strategy, responding now to people who need something now, creating some resilience for people, getting them longer term support. So we give them what they need now to make sure they can survive today. We then look at what help they might need to try to get out of the situation that they are in. But we also look at what we can do to create a city that is as free of poverty as we can make it. And those are much, much longer term activities. We also shouldn't forget that we have our own York Financial Assistance Scheme on top of the Crisis and Resilience Fund scheme. And that's also an important part of our direct support for residents who are experiencing poverty. And there are many other ways that we support residents who are living in poverty. Councillor Waller asked a question about public reporting, and obviously the welfare benefits annual report does come to exec member decision session, which is public, and the papers are published. And so everyone has access to them. And it's always great to be reminded of all the brilliant work that is done throughout the year in supporting people in York. And that is one of the more hopeful things that we have to make decisions on at these decision sessions. I also just wanted to note that in the last couple of years, we've been using data to help us target people who don't necessarily come forward for help. We know that there are people in our city who are not coming forward and perhaps not coming to the council particularly for help. So we have increasingly been using data to go out to them, to reach out to people and to say, we think that you might be entitled to more help than you're claiming. And we know that that's had phenomenal success. And I look forward to hearing more success on that at the next annual welfare benefits report, because it's a really great opportunity to go out and find those people who aren't necessarily knocking on our door to ask for help. And my final comment is a reminder to residents that if you are struggling financially, the council is somewhere you can come for help, and there will be support and signposting available for you when you need us. Councillor Webb, do you have any comments on this?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Lomas. Firstly, I think I've been working with Councillor Lomas and support around our anti-poverty work and sort of tackling inequality in York over time, and I just sort of want to pay tribute to her and her work on this, because I think it's been really powerful, and also to really put on record thanks to the officers in Revs and Bens who've been working tirelessly in a very, very short period of time to make a huge difference to people of York. And I think that in terms of, council staff who make a direct impact on people who absolutely, really, really deserve it and need that help, you guys are probably top of that list, right? So you are doing fantastic work with, albeit limited resources. So well done and thank you. I've said this before, but we live in a capitalist society, and one of the problems of that is that automatically leads to poverty, and that is a real problem. And anything that we can do to alleviate that is absolutely welcome. And we can't get away from the fact as well that austerity choices nationally over the last 15, 16 years have led to further inequalities and further poverty. And that is something that we have to do what we can to tackle. And I think that actually that sort of is where we need to start, really, yes, it is welcome that we have this money to support families who really, really need it. But what we want to do is create a society, a York, where this money isn't actually needed as much. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to rely on a sort of a welfare system, but we actually had people who, were doing very, very well all by themselves? So we need to think about what other things we can do, whether that's, reducing energy costs, housing costs through, our housing programme to build affordable homes is one of the biggest things we can do to make a difference in York, which is an incredibly expensive place to live. Councillor Lomas, sort of, to be honest, said an awful lot of the things that I really sort of wanted to cover, but she's got the main bits. The low income family tracker is the data that she was referring to, the LIFT data. That has proven to be a huge, huge benefit to identifying people and leading us somewhat to go and talk to, really, and say, look, are you entitled to X, Y, and Z? And that has generated huge amounts of income for those individuals. And I'm really hopeful that over the next few years, we can work more closely with the DWP, for example, to improve our data collection further and support more people. But I don't think it's wrong to reiterate what Councillor Omar said. If you feel that you are in need of support, please do reach out, get in touch with your local ward councillor, at one of those community hubs, for example, that Councillor Waller mentioned, with the City Council directly here at West offices over the phone. We will help if we can, absolutely. One of the benefits of this is it's a 3-year programme, so we've got 3-year funding, so we can plan how we spend this money, and it's not, we're not worried too much about the fact that are we going to get the same next year or not, because that's been an issue for quite a long time now. Actually being able to plan slightly longer term makes a big difference. Just in answer to a couple of points Councillor Waller raised, there is absolutely a problem with cost of living and rising bills. And I couldn't agree more on that point. And there are indeed really clear pockets of deprivation in the city. I represent Tang Hall, I represent Bell Farm. They are areas where, sadly, they've been overlooked for a long, long time. And everything I've mentioned around poverty and austerity have hit them far worse than other communities in York. And so, absolutely, we need to do what we can to support. Another point Councillor Waller made was around community resilience. As part of the tenets of this Crisis and Resilience Fund is a need to support community resilience. And I maybe Councillor Waller missed it or whatever, but in the Annex A, the Crisis and Resilience Fund scheme, there is a paragraph which says the Community Resilience Fund scheme will maintain and develop partnership and coordinated financial inclusion activity through the following, but not limited to: Financial Inclusion Steering Group, which Councillor Lomas mentioned, Advice York, the Good Place Network, which involves those community hubs that Councillor Waller mentioned, food projects, warm spaces, HAF projects, that's holiday activity and food programme, which again provides food for children outside of term time and activities for them. You know, I've put on record, I don't think it's necessarily the best way to deliver food and support to families, but if we're going to do it, I'm glad we're doing it the York way, because we're doing it better than everywhere else. So that's really positive. Raise York, our children's network, again, a great initiative that started through this administration and through national support with huge reforms in children's services. Digital Friendly York, Neighbourhoods York, ward funding, which again, this administration has re-administered so that those who are in need get the most ward funding, because we've done this based on deprivation levels. That wasn't the case under previous administrations, and we've made that change because it's the right thing to do. And Citizens Advice York. Now, that's some of our partners that maybe Councillor Waller missed, but we do continue to do this, and they are not the only partners that we'll work with. We'll work with anyone who's here to support children, young people, families, parents, old people, everybody. Finally, it'd be wrong if I didn't mention free school meals. She's not quite limited to this report, but what we're doing with York Hungry Minds is something else on top of what is happening here in the city and here in this report. And again, that's just another avenue to support families' pockets, really simply by putting food into children, reducing the cost of sending your child to school, supporting your child, but also feeding those children, fueling them up ready to learn, and making a huge difference. It is a real shame that the Liberal Democrats don't support that, something that we have massively funded and supported in Westfield Ward in particular, but now we're looking to expand to many, many more places across York. So we're doing good stuff. It's a shame that we have to do so much, but I'm glad that we're doing it the York way. We're doing it right, and we're making a big difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. We'll now look at the recommendations, which are on page 23, paragraph 13, and we're asked to approve the scheme set out at Annex A, and then to give the appropriate delegations should there be changes to the scheme. And I am very happy to approve that recommendation. So thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for all your work. and we'll just take a slight moment to swap chairs and allow officers to get on and go and deliver this scheme. Thank you.
Right, thank you, everybody. So I'm Councillor Jenny Kent, and I'm going to take over for item 7, which is the North Yorkshire and York Local Nature Recovery Scheme adoption of evidence. And we've got 3 officers here to help us with this, which is fantastic. Guy Hanson, who's Design and Conservation Manager, Alison Cook, Head of Strategic Policy Planning, and Claire Fold, Chief Strategy Officer. So welcome. It's great to have you here. Thank you for all the work you've done on this. I don't know who's going to kick off. Apologies, Claire. I assume you're overseeing everything in the so apologies, Alison and Guy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The local nature recovery strategy is a spatial strategy that seeks to map nature recovery actions and deliver the government's England-wide nature targets. They are statutory requirement as set out in the Environment Act 2021 and as a new system of spatial strategies to deliver for this purpose. North Yorkshire Council was appointed by the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs as the responsible authority to deliver and produce the LNRS, and City of York Council were appointed as the supporting authority. So we have been working very closely with North Yorkshire Council to support the development of the strategy, and most recently brought before Executive the draft publication version in November 2025, which we subsequently formally endorsed. North Yorkshire Council Executive have now approved the publication version of the local nature recovery strategy for North Yorkshire and York, and they did that on the 20th of January this year and formally published that on their website in mid-February. We're presenting the report today to seek endorsement of the strategy as part of City of York Council's evidence base to support decision making and future plan making for the city. I'll just hand over to Guy. As it's strategy, we need to move into a delivery phase of that strategy, and Guy will take us through that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Councillor. The bit that we know about delivery is really in the background section of the paper, and this is obviously an emerging area. We know that DEFRA hosted a national workshop for all LNRS responsible authorities on the 10th of February to help shape what delivery will look like, and DEFRA have circulated some draft guidance to the responsible authorities. And we think that updates will be shared with the LNRS advisory group and the board in March, so this month. And we're all really waiting on the big elephant in the room, which is around transition to delivery funding. DEFRA have sort of given us some structure to how they think delivery will work, and they've sort of split it up into sort of 4 key functions. One is around leading and convening a delivery partnership, and what we know on that is that possibly the responsible authority role will move from North Yorkshire Council to York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority as part of devolution developments, probably also because the funding will be channeled through there. And we think also that the existing organisation and memberships of the North Yorkshire and York Local Nature Partnership might be utilised as a sort of subgroup of the combined authority as part of the sort of governance role. And they also refer to setting up suitable delivery partnerships, providing direction to partnership, coordinating delivery amongst the partnership. We're also, I understand that there's a LNRS board in late March, and so we'll hopefully know more after that. And then the other strand is around embedding LNRS into local decision making. So that's using LNRS in plan making, whether that's spatial development strategy, the local plan, mineral waste plans, or even neighbourhood plans. Also having regard to LNRS in your own organisation, which falls under the biodiversity duty under the Environment Act. So that has been ongoing since 2021. Support other public bodies to have regard to the LNRS and support external partners to use the LNRS, so wildlife trusts and people like that. And then there's another strand, which is identify strategic projects and facilitate project development. Again, we don't know much about this, but it will be by identifying projects, using the LNRS as a sort of filter and suitability guide, engage with project partners, develop new potential projects, along with the relevant existing projects to be ready to be delivered, and work with partners to ensure project designs are shaped by the LNRS, and keep a record of planned projects. And then the fourth strand is around monitoring and report on the delivery of the LNRS priorities. So that was sort of embedded into the LNRS strategy, that there'll be a reporting phase to actually see whether we're delivering on this. Again, we don't know what metrics they'll be using, but they have confirmed not to measure things that are already being measured. So that's sort of useful. So not B&G, for instance, because that has its own sort of outcome, interestingly, of which in the end of this month, we'll be making our first report on B&G delivery through the planning system. Thank you.
Thank you, Guy. Did you want to add anything, Alison? Or you happy with it? Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I very much welcome this, and I want to say thank you to both of you and the huge amount of work that I know has gone into this. I said it when we approved the draft to go out for consultation, but I know that this has involved multiple workshops, guys sitting in public libraries, engaging people and getting their thoughts and their input into this. And so running through this, there's a lot that's internal, CYC, our planning and our conservation departments, but a lot of it is external as well, because we really need those partners in order to be able to deliver this. But I really want to thank you for reaching out to all those partners throughout this process and continuing to do so, because that's what's going to make it work at the end. And we're all waiting, aren't we? This is great. I'm very happy to approve this, but it's the what next and who's going to pay for it, bluntly. It's where the resources is coming to actually deliver this. But I'm optimistic. And what this does mean is in all our engagements with partners, and you mentioned this in both paragraph 5 and paragraph 6, saying success depends on landowner engagement and voluntary uptake of nature recovery actions. York is such an enthusiastic city. People really want to restore nature on their doorstep and see this happening across the region. So reaching out to all those people, encouraging them and letting them use the strategy of the LNRS and the objectives and the protected species and habitats that have been identified is really helpful to inform them how they can do this best. Because I know day in, when I meet people across the city who say, well, what can I do on my front door? Any advice and guidance around that is really helpful for them. So I think together, let's go forth with an optimistic view. I very much look forward to hearing from DEFRA what the next steps are. But for now, I just want to thank you for bringing this and go to recommendation and reasons at paragraph 18 on page 4. I'm very happy to note the decision by North Yorkshire Council to publish the LNRS and to accept the local nature recovery strategy as approved as a statutory evidence base to inform planning decisions and plan making. The reason given there is to ensure compliance with the Environment Act 2021. I'd say that our more overwhelming reason is because we are really ambitious to restore and improve nature in York and North Yorkshire and engage everybody with us in that. And this is a really good means to do that. So thank you very much. I'm now going to hand over to Councillor Pete Kilbane, who's going to chair from here on item 8 and 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent, and thank you everyone for that last item. Great to see progress being made. And as to progress being made, it is a real honour actually to be sat in the chair for the next item, which is the decision on whether or not we commit the council to adopting York's cultural strategy, which I know many people have been working on for quite a while, not least Claire Fole. So, Claire, I will hand over to you.
Thank you, Councillor. The report today invites you to adopt the York Cultural Strategy on behalf of the city. The Cultural Strategy sets a bold ambition for the city and was developed by cultural and heritage organisations who considered how to strengthen community engagement, create an inclusive environment to enable participation and enjoyment for all, support the creative workforce and enhance York's cultural identity. Our unique cultural and diverse heritage, independent, vibrant arts, festivals and strong renowned culinary scene, together with our inclusive and innovative spirit, is second to none, and rightly a great source of pride. Where culture is both an attractor for residents and investors, places the city firmly on the global stage and is woven into our shared history and identity that we experience today. It simply fuels our economy. The cultural strategy is important because it sets out the ambitions for all cultural activities in communities, village halls, libraries, pubs, and people's own spaces across every corner of the city. Whether arts, dance, music, museums, visual arts, or theatres, this strategy is for all residents. By adopting it today, you will also mandate officers to work with the sector, community groups and residents to deliver the ambitions. This includes identifying opportunities to embed culture into placemaking through local plan policies and continue to support the sector growth by attracting investment into both infrastructure, skills and business growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you for all the work that you've done on this strategy. And I was interested to hear saying how the strategy will give us the power to mandate officers to work in this field. I don't think the officers have needed much mandating in order to carry forward this work, and I'm sure we will continue to do so into the future. As well as yourself, it would be remiss of me not to also thank Laura Williams, late of this parish, who did quite a lot of work on this strategy previously. And of course, this strategy does not belong to the council. The strategy was facilitated through us and through North Yorkshire. So it belongs to York and the region. But also the refresh was brought forward by a huge range. I think I've counted some 17 different organisations that have been involved in this, who are named in the strategy, and there will be more beyond, who've worked on this refresh for us, which is building on the work of the previous administration, which you may have been involved in that 20 to 25 cultural strategy too. So building on that work and bringing a focus to it at what is a really important time for culture in York, North Yorkshire and the UK in general. And it's really important to think that people understand that you can't have a strategy that is imposed upon people. It needs to come from the bottom up, just like culture itself, where people seek to impose a culture on people. You are entering into that neo-Nazi territory that we saw in the 1920s, with all of the flags going up all over Germany, and we saw in the films of Leni Riefenstahl. Of course, that's not culture, that's propaganda. And it's really important, as we are living in these times again, where those neo-Nazi ideas have resurfaced and are being demonstrated around our cities and towns throughout the country, that the culture of the people reasserts itself. And culture is just something that happens when we come together. Yes, councils and other organisations can facilitate it, but what culture takes is people. It is the expression of the creativity of the people who are living in a certain area, and it makes us who we are. Culture makes us who we are, and it makes life worth living. And it happens when we share together. We may be intrigued about other people's culture, or we may come together and create things together. So it is about sharing, and it brings us all together. And it's really important to say that it belongs to absolutely everyone. So this cultural strategy, and it's great to see it running all the way through it, belongs to the people of York, its visitors and welcome guests, to all create and join in the culture that we experience. And of course, you've alluded to, Claire, that it is what makes life worth living. So, its impact on well-being cannot be underestimated. It's culture that brings us joy, that brings us happiness, as well as maybe asking some questions and facing up to some of the choices and decisions that we make in our life, reflecting on how we live. But it also has a huge economic impact. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and they weren't really getting, as far as I could see, I might have been misinterpreting, but they weren't really getting the economic impact of culture. And I said to them, what do you think built modern Edinburgh? Yes, a few thousand people like to go and watch the military tattoo. That happens every year. Not for everyone, but lots of people enjoy it. Thousands, a million people more millions, I'm not sure what the total figure is, go to Edinburgh for its Fringe Festival, which is far from being a fringe festival now. So the economics of that city is built upon the cultural impact that people have had by telling jokes, putting on plays, singing songs, doing things together. And again, that is what we want to see more of in York. It's also a gateway, and it's brilliant to see referenced by all the organisations that we've worked with here about cultural entitlement for young people in York, and making sure that York is the first city in the UK where that cultural entitlement for young people is put down in a strategy and then lived out in action. And the reason for that is within our administration, we are really keen that everybody who grows up in York can thrive in York. And not everybody who grows up in York is going to be academically gifted or interested, for that matter, in gaining A-levels or degrees. And quite frankly, why should they be? And what the cultural industries allow for is people who may not be academically minded to find a decent living and an interesting job working in that sector. And this was really brought home to me when I went to one of the cultural creatives get-togethers that they have, a networking event every now and again. And I said to one of the guys who was there, I said, "What are you doing here? What are you after? What do you get out of it?" And he said, "Well, actually, I'm looking for a better paid job, you know, because I'm thinking of starting a family, living in York." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, and how much do you currently earn, if you don't mind me asking?" He said, "Well, I'm only on 50,000 a year at the moment, and I think I can earn quite a bit more with some of the people who are here." And it made me pause and think, well, okay, what that guy did was he worked in the gaming industry, which is culture. You know, it is a cultural and creative industry, and he was making a living in that, and it would be a living that would allow him to buy a house and raise a family in this city already. He wanted a better standard of living for himself, and why not? And so those opportunities being there for all of our young people is really important. And knowing that they're there, knowing that their creativity, knowing that their artistry, knowing that their skills are there is really important. Plus all of the other industries that go with it. You know, you can't build a stage set without a carpenter. You can't put on a show without an electrician. So really important that those messages get through to our young people. And of course, what this strategy also does is cement our position as a UNESCO Creative City of Media Arts. It shows a real commitment to that, and we can't underestimate how important that global recognition is for the city. And so finally, just to finish, we've started on that pathway of cultural entitlement for young people. We have funded the Filmmaking in Schools project so that every state secondary in York, kids that go to that will have the opportunity to create a film from scratch to premiere a BAFTA-nominated film festival on a big screen with all their friends and families there. It's been a huge success the last couple of years. What we need to do now is extend that through our passport schemes for young people into all aspects of culture, so that people know there is a place and a home and a creative thing for them to do in York. So, as you may well imagine from everything that I've just said, I am more than happy to commit the council to adopt the York Cultural Strategy as set out in paragraph 13 of the paper. So thank you, and thanks to everybody who's been involved thus far. Okay. Yes, thank you, Claire. The only other matter I have on the agenda is urgent business. No urgent business has been raised with me today, so at that point, I will bring today's meeting to an end. Thank you all for watching.